Hey everybody, welcome back to Trinity Dairy. Don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out our merch store. We'll have a link in the description for that. We're here in the barn today. We got something a little bit different. We get a lot of questions asking about how the cows are doing and kind of how we determine our nutrition and stuff. So we thought we'd talk about that a little, and we have our nutritionist here today. This is Tom, and I'll kind of let him explain who he works for and kind of what he does for us.
Yeah, I'm Tom Schoenfeld. I work for Form-A-Feed, but also work for the Pierz Co-op. And I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've gotten to know Al and Jen here in the last few years. And so I stop out once a month and take feed samples and balance the ration up for their production, and go through their DHIA information to make sure we're on track with breeding and milking and peak milk, things like that. So that's always important on the dairy farm. The other thing we got to remember is keeping things in line economically wise, and that's the joy of feeding in a tie stall barn, that Al and Jen can feed their cows according to production, putting the money in the right mouths.
Yep, and that's kind of what, so we do DHIA tests. So once a month there's a tester that comes out, they pull a sample of milk out of every cow. That's tested, well, they get the weight, what that cow's milking, what their components, butter, fat, and stuff is, and then you get a copy of that information as well. So he can look that over. And, you know, we base a lot of stuff off of that. And one of the benefits of having him do that, it kind of gets the most bang for our buck on DHIA, because he can take that information. Then he also takes like samples of our forage, things like that.
Yep.
So to determine, you know, what their cows are lacking, or, you know, what they need, what they don't. Maybe they're getting too much of something, you know. I mean, you know, like my grandpa's son used to be, well, just give them more corn, you know, just more corn.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not always the case. And,
Nope.
And one thing I've found too, a good nutritionist is probably one of the most beneficial things you can have. A bad nutritionist, I guess, or a poor one can break you, really. I mean,
cost you a lot of money.
I've talked to some where they just, you know, if your feed doesn't quite make the cut, well, you got to throw that away.
Yeah,
you know, we got a product here, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't, you know, sell a product. I mean, one thing we've started on is Hydrolac that you offer.
Yep.
And that's, I don't know, I have to say that has done wonders, you know, for us. And but it's one of them things, you know, try it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But I mean, I've had some where it's like, oh no, you can't milk cows without having this, and you know, they don't even want to deal with you.
Or your feed quality is too poor.
Yeah. Oh, you're feeding ground ear corn. How dare you? You know,
It reminds me of when you started with Pierz, and you brought in a hay sample, and they were like,
oh yeah,
you feed this?
Yeah,
like,
when I first started, and I didn't have a nutritionist or nothing, you know, and. Yeah, so they said, well, bring out samples of what, you know, and I had some old grass hay. That's all I had, you know.
Yep.
He looks, he's like, you feed this? Like, yeah.
Yep.
But we made it work, you know. And
that's the important of having constant communication with your feed representatives about, if a feed stuff isn't, homegrown feed stuff might not be up to par.
Yep.
We can add just a little trickle of something to make it work inside these cows.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and that seems to make a big difference. And also, I mean, you know, not just the cows, I mean the calves, you know, he'll go through, look at our baby calves if we're having a scour issue, something like that, you know, and it helps to have a different point of view. Hey, have you tried this? You know, I didn't even think of that.
Different set of eyes once in a while goes a long ways.
And you know, he sees many different farms, you know, it's like, well, hey, so-and-so's had the same thing, or so that I don't know, it's been very beneficial for us. It really has. And you know, and we get a lot of people that ask, you know, well, what's your, you know, how's your herd doing? Has it improved since we started our channel, you know, in the last 3 years? And you can come over here, Jen, so you can kind of get in, because you were looking too at, like, what were you saying, like in 2020?
In January of 2020, when we started the channel, our rolling herd average was under 13,000. And so since then, it's gone up to over 19,000 for a rolling herd average. So that's, you know, like a 7,000 pound gain over 3 years.
Yep. And what that equates to then is about a 20 pound per cow a day increase.
Yeah, sure. And that's, you know, I mean, obviously a lot of that has nutrition, and a lot of it also breeding, changing, you know, done pretty much solely AI now, and kind of learning a little bit more on our what bulls we pick as well. But
Well, I think that, like you said, it's having a good team on your side, making sure that everyone's helping make the farm succeed. And like I said, it's not just one thing that does it. It's a culmination of efforts of, you know, choosing the right bulls. But then the minute that calf hits the ground, let's make sure we've got the absolute best colostrum going into there. So like using a refractometer has been a huge thing to check the colostrum quality. Colostrum's not up to par, we have a really good colostrum replacer. And then from there it goes to a really good calf feed and then heifer feed.
well, and that's where we ran into our calves were doing super good when they were little. Get on milk, they were getting a calf feed, and when they'd get weaned off of milk and they kind of went to that next group, they were just like, I mean, they were just dropping. They just wouldn't. Well, then got talking with Nutritionist, and they're, well, hey, let's mix you up some kind of a grain mix that'll, you know, kind of keep them more smooth off of the feed they were on, and I mean that made a world of difference there.
Well, yeah, because a lot of those heifers that when we started that heifer feeding program, they are now the ones in the herd milking.
Yep. So
And you can see the difference in them that you've got. I mean, like a little Jersey first calf heifer is milking over 60 pounds a day. It's like, that's pretty good.
yeah, and like we were talking with the Hydrolac, you know, when actually Jim, the nutritionist we had before, same company. He started on the Hydrolac, and that was mainly in the summer. It was kind of like a hydration in hot weather. And it wasn't, I think a lot of people, oh, it doesn't work because they weren't gaining milk.
Right.
But it wasn't to gain milk, it was to
maintain milk.
what you had. And I noticed that in really hot weather. Well, then you had suggested that it's kind of keep it in the feed all the time.
Yep, for stressful periods.
Yep. And so we did that, and one thing that I had really noticed and still do is these cows that come fresh, they don't lag.
Yep.
I would have trouble, like when a cow would freshen, it's like almost within the next day she would be almost off of feed and just kind of droopy, and it would take a couple weeks to kind of get her rolling, and it's like now they just start out there and go. And that's
the Hydrolac's been a good product on that, and the calving. Just gets them hydrated faster, gets them on feed faster. Just they feel good right away.
Yep. And so that's stuff like that is just something I never would have really thought. It's, well, I stick it in the summer when it's hot. And
we're always looking for new applications.
Things that are.
Well, there's always stuff that you got.
I mean, kind of pick through whatever.
I know, like right now we were talking, we got like 3 cows in here that the somatic has gone really high on, and they're cows that have just freshened.
Right.
And like the one, well, Millie is one that was higher, I believe. And I don't know no signs of mastitis at all. I mean, your filter is clean and everything, but and maybe it's just something with her being fresher. That's kind of common, I think, when they first freshen to be high.
The somatic cell is white blood cells, and so they're always fighting off a little something there when they're calving. It's a stressful time.
Well, that was Connie, because she was high, but she was only 8 days fresh when we tested, so it was like, it was really against her.
And we have got her kind of treating her now to try to clear that. It was just 1 quarter, we CMT'd and stuff, but so you kind of get that, and you got to kind of, you can look at the herd as a whole blanket thing, and then when you get down to each individual cow, is it something that, well, she's high just because, like I said, she's just fresh. Or is she, she's been milking for 6 months and she's still high, there's probably something else going on,
Right.
Well, so like when you get our paperwork and you look it over, is there something on there that you look at right away that you're like, oh, this is something we need to touch on, or is this, or like?
Yeah, I mean, there's always several highlights in the DHIA paper.
Here, I'll give you the camera for a while. My arm's getting sore.
But yeah, so normally when I come to Alan Jen's place here, we look at peak milk, how the heifers are doing versus the mature cows, and we talk about that. Somatic cell is always an important deal. It has to do with udder health, but also it puts money in Alan Jen's pockets here with having a good, clean, low somatic cell herd. So that's always mindful. And then usually the number of heifers to mature cow ratio is also important, and that dictates how much milk is in the bulk tank totally. And today they're sitting at 50% heifers. And we know that heifer normally gives about 75% the milk of a mature cow. So that their herd is a little younger right now, which is great. So we have great new genetics in the barn. So we should see more improvements throughout the years.
Sure,
So
sure.
that's always important. But we know that maybe the tank average might not be there where it could be, just because we do have a lot of young animals.
Yep, yep.
But having good young animals, that goes back to what Jen said, is good feeding program, good breeding program. You're always going to have young animals in the barn. So I look at that, and then just also the lactation curve is what we call it, is how a cow will start out a little slower in milk, and by about day 60 is their peak in milk, and then they get pregnant shortly after that, and then they slowly decline. So we make sure those numbers are always in check every
Yeah.
month, and if there's any deviation somewhere in the paperwork, we usually know who it is in the farm.
And that's one thing too, that when we breed back now, we've gone, what is it, 70 days now that we shoot for? Just,
Yep.
and I think 60, was it 60? Usually kind of, we lengthened ours out a little bit just because of they had increased in milk.
Right.
Your industry norm, I think, is like 50 days or
50
something.
days,
But
yeah.
which it used to be 60. But yeah, we've seen more benefit in going to 70.
Well,
60
now,
to 70,
yeah. I mean, like with some of the early cows we had, I mean, by the time they were ready to dry off,
Oh.
they were done milking. They were ready to dry off.
Right.
But now we're getting, these cows, we were losing milk because we were drying these cows off,
Yeah.
and they were still milking really well.
Right.
So
Right.
we thought, well, we'll bump that breeding up to 70 days.
And it seemed like they settled on
Yeah.
at 70 days. It seemed like they settled on
because
one breeding.
if they're milking really heavy,
Heavy.
they're not going to settle as well, or maybe
Yep.
not all at all either. For till that slows down.
Yeah, and there was just an article in Progressive Dairyman about lifetime milk. At what point do you breed them?
Oh, sure.
It affects this lactation and it affects next lactation. So kind of the folks that have really good breeding like you guys do here, about 1.5 services per conception, people are able to stretch that out a little further, capture a little more of that peak milk, still get them pregnant.
Oh, yep.
And then dry them off like normal.
Sure.
So that's actually I have a few farmers that they've stretched it to about 85 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And their breeding is still good, and they're just capturing more of that peak milk.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Yeah, that's one thing that's nice with this, is you can look at each individual herd and you can
Yep.
say, well, hey, you can change your breeding date or
Oh.
this or that, and
Oh yeah, and how it'll influence
yeah,
in the future.
Yeah.
The other thing with the DHI information that we also can capture a whole year's worth of data, and we can look at it right here and say, oh, where were you a year ago or 6 months ago, or how are you doing compared to the summer months and things like that.
Yeah.
So the folks that are not on DHI, they usually don't have these kind of records.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we're on DHI, for Dairy Herd Improvement Association.
Yeah.
So that's really, the other thing is I was scrolling through here is that age at first calving.
Yep.
You've gotten down that 24, 25 months, so
Yep.
they're calving in at the right time. And I think prior years ago, you probably were a little higher than that. And so,
Yeah, a little bit.
so every month we get this new heifer in the barn, that means profitability. And so that's really important. And also the lifetime milk that this cow will give, if she's in the barn 1, 2, 3 months earlier,
Sure.
that's more profit for you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what we need to look at as well. So yeah. So
And there's other things that's kind of nice to pick up too. I know you look at like their component numbers, like their butter fat,
Oh.
or if there's inversions,
yep.
where your protein is higher than your butter fat,
Yeah.
will indicate a problem of something going on.
Yep. And sometimes it's genetic. Sometimes you have a cow that just loves corn and not forage. So
Yep.
we really can't do much about that.
And I think, and I don't remember if it was you or Jim that was talking, we were kind of looking at that number for like ketosis, possible
Oh.
ketosis, I think.
Yeah. A high butter fat in a fresh cow usually means
that what it was? Okay, yep.
Usually means that she might not be eating so well. She's taking energy from herself to make that milk, and so that can be
Sure.
can cause a problem down the road. So yeah, that's kind of
So that-
in the components today. You're getting paid on components.
Yeah,
How many
yeah.
pounds of butter fat? How many pounds of protein? That's what every creamery is paying on today. So
Yeah.
it's always important to look at that number. Again, back to profitability.
Yep. So, All right, well, I think that probably covers it pretty well, huh? So we're gonna thank Tom for stopping out and helping us with everything he does. It really means a lot to have that, like I said, that extra input and different ideas on stuff. And we'll thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.